just a massive Judas culture. The potential future of Lions was in the balance. Croft's going to be in the Lions, and I think I actually started to believe it. It was just raw emotion for him. It was whatever he thought he said, and that's why he gained the respect, and that's why people sort of bought into what he stood for and where he wanted this Lions team to go.
On Channel M Rugby, won't we? Find out.
Well, this has been a long time coming.
Welcome.
Finally.
All the abuse I've been getting and listening to on this podcast. I mean, actually, a very impressive set. But the amount of abuse I get driving home from work. Finally, it's my time
to settle the score.
Yeah, time to end you.
We are joined by our great friend, former teammate, Tom Croft.
Good to see you.
Great. Well, I see you a lot. I see you a lot now. I'll see you after this.
You've moved back in.
I have moved.
I love it.
It's gone full circle, hasn't it, Coley?
Your career has gone full circle, yeah.
It has. When I first moved up, lived with my brother and Ben Pina, and then I quickly moved in with yourself, and now I'm back with yourself.
I think I actually stopped my now wife, Harriet, your cousin, from actually moving in. Because I said, well, you can't move in because Ben's still living with me.
Well, you maybe sign a contract when we're pissed.
I did. Got him pissed. Said
difficult because I've got,
I'm about to say he
took a lot.
So two pints into
0% beer at the time.
Yeah.
I think we started midday.
And I laminated with sellotape, didn't I? We stuck it on the side of the unit. I think it's still in the drawer. Actually, that along with a picture signed by Johnny Wilkinson to Ben Young's best of luck in your career.
I know, how good.
Yeah, I'm going to sell that at some point. That'd be worth it.
I've still got a lot of stuff. And the other day, I moved house back to Norfolk, and I had some final bits left in the house, and I was like, Crofty, you wouldn't mind I couldn't get everything in. I was like, you wouldn't mind just grabbing some last bits. Not much, you'll fit in absolutely fine.
So I've gone on the way to pick the kids up from hockey, gone to his house, which is obviously completely empty, bar this king-size mattress where he's told me he's rolled up and he's basically put a ribbon around it. Henry the Hoover, a microwave, some weird spiky thing, and a big tray of crap, basically. Didn't fit in my car at all. I was very, very tempted, in the knowledge that his new owners were moving in the next day, to go to his toilet and just leave him a little surprise there. Because Ben obviously had a habit of doing that. I think it was 2010, we went to Australia on tour. Matt, I told you, all those stories you give in is coming back. We went to tour. It was 2010, wasn't it? We went to Australia. And we were living together, and you must have been the last out of the house because we came back, 6-7 weeks later,
yes,
and you had gone to the toilet and not flushed. It just swollen into this beast. And the stink was just, it was like, welcome back, back to the summer holidays, let's relax in the summertime.
You're so happy to go home, aren't you?
Finally home. There's a big cloud of flies come out the front door. It's like, brilliant, nice to be home, cheers, Len.
He's actually rang me like, you bastard, what have you done? I was like, what do you mean what I've done? Like, you are disgusting. I said, man, I had no idea. I was like, to leave now, I want to get out of there. My holidays have started.
You do need to reverse it, but anyway. I forgot what we were talking about.
Where were we? Well, I'm living with you.
Yeah, you're back.
You loaded up kindly, but Hamish, bless him, he was in the back seat with the mattress, and his basically face was placed against the glass.
Squashed against the window. Completely safe. See you back on, but no, still looking after you, mate. You move back in. We'll tell Harry and the kids to move out, and we can,
we can relive our...
Get back to playing Call of Duty and ping pong at 4 a.m. That's basically all we did.
It's exactly what we did. That's exactly what we did.
He's smarter now, though, isn't he? Like, you were the author of Stuff Ben Said, the book.
Myself and George Shoots. We've still got about 4 cases of them at home, so available for sale.
That was bollocks from you because, well, it's obviously for charity, which I'm all for.
Which is terrible.
Which basically means I can't do anything about it. I can't be like, no, we're not. Like, can you stop?
Put the embargo on it.
Yeah, I can't.
That's all charity, mate. Why would you take money away from charity? That's not very nice.
That's what
completely the truth. And going back to that, obviously you've said that wasn't the truth. Myself and George Shooter had a regular WhatsApp group of anything you said. And actually, even 2 nights ago, you asked your cousin, is an egg a fruit or a vegetable?
I love how you just made this up.
At the dining room table.
Listen to him. It's lies.
It's out
propaganda.
It's out there on social media.
Right, as much as you want to keep lying on here, Crofty, you're actually here to talk all things Lions. Of course, you toured in 2009 and 2013, but we want to go back to the 2009.
Coley had hair.
Coley had a nest.
Yeah.
He did. Like Seth Rogen.
2009. How old would we been then? I'm trying to think. 22. How old are you on that tour? 23, 24. So were you the youngest on tour? No.
No. Who was youngest?
Lee Halfpenny, wasn't it?
Halfpenny was. Yeah. Good knowledge.
It was.
Can't you remember?
No, I do vaguely.
I'm trying to think.
that.
Yeah, who was walking around with the teddy bear?
Yeah.
And always got
The
named
teddy
to it.
bear.
Well,
The lion.
Bill.
Bill. Yeah. All right.
Bill the Lion. Yeah, all right. You're a Lions legend, mate. You should be, know all the
It's long
terminology.
way. What's that? 16 years ago. 15 years ago.
That's mad, actually.
That's scary. Yeah.
So Ian McGeechan, Geech was restored to bring back like, sort of the Lions' values and traditions.
The biggest thing about what you earn in this jersey is a respect and a reputation. And to any person, that's the biggest thing you can ever have. Respect and a reputation for what you do and what you stand for.
He last coached them in 1997, of course, played for them as well. So what was he like, mate? And what was that coaching staff like as a whole?
Was he actually coaching? Sorry.
He was probably more that sort of team manager role. He sort of spoke at either set the scene at the start of meetings or had that sort of final word, as you probably saw in the third test. We were sort of, it was kind of billed to us really early on that obviously after 05, the whole Lions brand, sponsorship, the sort of the potential future of Lions was in the balance because of what happened in 05. When that's no disrespect to the guys who played that tour, it was just a brutal tour to play on. So this was a bit of a, right, let's get Lions back on track, build the brand, get everyone back engaged with it. And Geech was just a fantastic person to do that. He just spoke exceptionally well. Those iconic speeches you've seen from back in the day, was like with Telfer and those sort of guys, Geech sort of just fulfilled that role. So he didn't coach a huge amount. I mean, for me, I was just absolutely shit scared. I mean, I was 23 years old, wasn't really meant to be on the tour in the first place, then got called up literally 4 days before the plane flew off to South Africa. And it was a massive whirlwind for me. And as you knew, as a player, I was quite a nervous, anxious player. So I was very much head down and just I'm playing with guys who I sort of admired as a youngster growing up as a player. And suddenly I'm in a team playing with them. And I'm just basically shit scared. I'm going to let them down. So 09's a massive whirlwind for me. Clarity didn't actually come until I was steaming after the third test. That's when real clarity set in of what we'd gone through. The actual tour itself was just physical, brutal. Lads getting operations and broken hit left, right, and centre. And for me, it was just head down and just survival being the first one. You're playing over in South Africa where the tracks were dry and fast, which kind of suited my game because I wasn't like the wet ground, get stuck in sort of a big tackling contest. But it was, Geech was just brilliant. He just set the scene so well. So before every training session, you were buzzing for it. Whether you played in the midweek game and you were backing up for the Saturday or vice versa, he just sort of, he just led. And then having guys like Wig there, obviously being a Leicester skin, for me was probably a bit of a comfort blanket. I had someone who I knew in the system, who any issues or any concerns, I could go to him. I mean, obviously I had Ellis with us, but we were both new into the Lions, and to be fair, we spent the majority of the time playing Scrabble together, and we were quite cliquey, but as Leicester people normally are.
You and Graham Roundtree playing Scrabble together?
Me and Harry Ellis were playing.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
we'll go back. You and Harry Ellis playing. Big scores were there?
Big 2 3-letter words, I'd say, yeah. But that was kind of, it was, I was a nervous, shy 23-year-old.
You were actually playing like board games, just for some of the listeners and viewers, mate. Were you actually playing Scrabble the board game? You weren't playing like an app on your phone?
I mean, the apps weren't there at that time, mate. No, it was just, I can't actually
Did you have a phone? Was
where
that
we
got
got the Scrabble board from, but we'd take ourselves off to a coffee shop and get stuck into a good game of Scrabble. That sounds terrible, doesn't it?
Really enjoying the South African lifestyle out on the tour. What was the Lions' values that? Because there'd have been players that went on the 2005 tour, Crofty, right? That was then on the 09 one. Did they sort of share what was different, or were they very much the values they drove or changed, or did Geech change it? Like, who kind of just went, no, this is the way it's going to be done?
I mean, obviously, guys like Simon Shaw, who'd obviously been on multiple tours, and obviously in South Africa, he obviously got his first Test appearance. The first squad that they met up at Penny Hill and had the big team photo, I wasn't in that. Alan Quinlan was selected for that. I wasn't selected. And so at that point, I was out of the conversations. And so I believe a lot of the conversations regarding 05 were held then. I came in on the Saturday and we flew on the Sunday. So I think that had all been dealt with and parked before I turned up. And then just the figurehead, the iconic figureheads, the O'Connells, O'Callaghan, O'Driscoll, Agara, those sort of, especially those Irish guys, just took it by the balls and just led it. And they just drove an environment of, right, we've got to get to a level as quick as possible. As you know, on a tour, you have a very short period to get into a match ready position. I think the first game I played was Golden Lions. I remember training, the first training session, I think we landed on the Sunday and we were training by probably the Tuesday, and absolutely breathing through a straw. I thought, Christ, this is far too quick for me. I'm not ready for this. But then I realised we were at altitude, and kind of felt a bit better. And it was my main driver was just don't fuck up. That was all I was thinking about. I don't want to let these absolute icons of the game, the guys who have been there, done it, don't want to let them down. And that was my main driving. So fear as a 23-year-old was like, right, just don't mess up. Revise everything, get back into your bedroom, just going through reams and reams of books and calls and making sure that, I didn't mess up.
In many ways, Crofty, you were a shoe-in from the outside for that 09 tour to go. And then you actually became a bolter because you then got picked because Alan Quinlan got banned for, he got cited and he got banned for gouging, which then opened up the door for you then to come in. And then once you got on tour, mate, you played so well that you forced yourself in that Test team and then had an unbelievable Test series and will go down in that 09 team as, one of the standout performances players on that tour. But what do you remember about that announcement when you weren't picked? Because I was living with you and I was convinced you were going, as were so many other people. And it was a proper shock to all of us and yourself. And I remember living at the time and being like, Christ, we didn't see that coming. Not that you expect to get picked because you're not that guy at all, but there are players that are obviously getting ready for this tour that you expect to be in there, and you were definitely one of those guys. But then if they're not, it's almost bigger news. That's almost bigger news than who necessarily goes.
Yeah. Well, if you remember, we were in the training facility at Oval Park, and I think we were watching it on TV, and the names got announced. And I wasn't, and that's probably the first and only time in my career that I got mixed up with the media hype of, Croft's going to be in the Lions, and I think I actually started to believe it. When obviously Harry's name got announced and mine didn't, I was just like, I remember Cocker just tapping on my arse and saying, right, let's crack on, because we obviously had the European final. Was it the final? No, probably the semi-finals, one that went to the penalty kicks to go for. We were still in the Prem, still in probably the EDF at the time, whatever, I think it was EDF at the time. So we had so much as a club on the line still, that kind of helped. It was like, right, we're not in that, but next job, as Cockers at the time always was just crack on with club rugby, and that was my priority. So that kind of helped massively. And it obviously wasn't until the Wednesday before we played Leinster in the final up at Edinburgh in the Heineken Cup, I got a phone call from a Scottish guy. And he was like, telling me it was Ian McGeechan. I was like, this is one of the lads pissing around, because you might remember, I swear it was Dan Hipkiss called up Will Skinner before the 07 final with England, pretending to be John Wells, and said, he's like, Skins, Will, you're playing really well at the moment. I've been watching your games and you're fantastic. We've had an injury in camp and we need you to get out on a plane as quickly as possible to France, because I want you to start in the final. And Skins fell hook, line and sinker and was like, right, bags packed, waiting on the street, waiting for the taxi to turn up. And boys absolutely pissing. Hipkiss had just dropped a mitt, and it's the sort of thing that happens. I was like, right, this is going to happen to me. I'm pretty sure I basically went to hang up on Geech and was like, bollocks, this is just one of the lads pissing about. And it wasn't until I think it again got announced on Sky Sports. And then, so that was Wednesday, European final on the Saturday. Even that night, we lost against Leinster by 3 points, I think it was. We then went out on the piss that night to sort of end our season. And even then, I think it was your brother, was like, he, about 3 a.m, went to my bedroom to basically tie me up so I'd miss my flight back down to Heathrow to Penny Hill. Luckily, I'd changed room and I went and stayed with Hazard that night so we could get up together and leave. But even then, the boys are trying to tie you up and basically stop you living your dream and achieving what I think is the pinnacle of the game. So just a massive Judas culture, which I love. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, it just added to the stress and disbelief.
So you got up with Hazza, you got yourself down there, mate, and that was the first time you integrating into that squad.
It was, although, and there's evidence of this in my parents' house down south. 3 or 4 months prior to that, we went down to London to this big warehouse and the big like studio, lights, cameras, and you went full kit, full like anthem face pictures. So I was given a load of pictures of me in the Lions kit and then got told I wasn't selected. And then thankfully I did. So that was why, so second interaction, flew down with the Irish boys from Leinster. So it was a bit fucking awkward because, they've just beaten us. We've lost the European Cup. Down to Penny Hill, here's your kit bag. And about 2 hours later, we're down to Heathrow and off to go to South Africa. That was basically it. So I had no time to think about it, no time to stress or fret. It was European final, jump on a plane, another plane, South Africa, and off we go.
And then you arrive in SA, and was it anything like 2013 when we arrived in Hong Kong? Was it go out, boys, and get to know each other socially?
It was for the next sort of 2 or 3 days. It was awesome. That was probably my first real experience of Welsh people. That sounds like they were like a strange sort of like alien culture. But I remember we all obviously rocked up in full regalia, travelled in your ones. And then said, right, lads, we're all going out on the piss tonight, all together in the big lines and blazing bus. All the Welsh disappeared, came back down in skin-tight white jeans, all weirdly changed colour of their skin, absolutely fake tanned up to the hills. End of that night, I remember going back to the bedroom. I was sharing with James Hook and walked into the bathroom and thought, Christ, he's obviously eating a dodgy kebab or something, because all the white linen and towels were just covered in this brown stuff. I said, Christ. And then you sort of look to the side and there's bottles and bottles of Saint-Tropez, which obviously was there. Andy Powell was the same, it's like chameleons. They could change their skin colour. It was I just couldn't fathom it. And just got on the piss. But that was actually how the tour was. It was, first game, say on the Saturday, everyone goes out. Game on the Wednesday, everyone goes out. Even if you've got a 3-day turnaround, it's no one sort of saying, right, I'm playing in 3 days, so I won't have a few beers. Everyone was on it, and it just drew the team together so quickly. It was a bit of an old school, which you like. It was, you're working hard. If you played on a Wednesday, you're backing up training on a Thursday, as it was with you guys in 2013. But off the pitch, you just enjoyed yourselves. People going out for coffees, people going out for beers. It was just, yeah.
There's also, wasn't there a certain member of staff that was employed to help bring the squad together? Bobby Stridgen.
I mean, the legend.
The Lions legend, yeah.
The Commonwealth, what was he? Commonwealth Greco Judo master.
He was a wrestler,
like
wasn't he?
I mean,
yeah.
He's this tiny kid from, where is he? Warrington.
Wigan.
He was just on it around the clock the whole time. And then if you saw him go into his bedroom at, say, 10, 11 o'clock when everyone was sort of in bed and out, he would be just empty, like dead in the eyes, and he'd have to go and have, a good 8 hours to reach up and just go again. But he was just the energy you need, a bit like Hask used to be, just brought the energy, was always on. That was Bobby, and he was just there for the lads, and he just he was a good S&C guy, got the boys ready for a game. I remember he'd wrestle boys on the pitch. No one really knew that his background with wrestling, and I'm pretty sure he went to wrestle Shez, and no one really thought that this little dweeby lad from Wigan could do much. And I think
that's Andrew Sheridan, by the way.
Andrew Sheridan basically choked Shez out, and then basically took on a few more boys that went back to back to back and just started ending all these absolute giants. I was having nothing to do with it at the time. I'd have got injured, but you need that sort of character on tour. It just got the boys going. I remember after the after the third test, obviously we finally got a win. It was a bit of like a consolation, but we got a win. Good performance. Everyone was a bit jubilant, and we all had a few beers. And Bobby, I think he decided to get naked or something. DePace started running around again, nakedness to start, because that gets everyone a bit excited. Bobby just running around the change room butt naked. Harry Ellis then downed a bottle of champagne and threw up over someone. It was just it's a strange environment to be in. That's why it was surreal. That sort of you got Andy Powell, who's just, I don't know what he was saying, but it was funny. And and you got Bobby naked and Harry's throwing up over people. So it was we were a close knit group.
Let's move on.
His name, it was told us on the pod before. Bobby's decision was basically would run through the time gates where you do speed, and he'd basically run through the timing gates with the water bottles to make sure he was the fastest man.
Yeah, that was at the 2011 World Cup where, he wanted to be the quickest in world rugby at getting Wilco the tee.
He was rapid,
So
wasn't he? Didn't get Wilco the right ball, but got him the right tee.
So when we did speed gates, he would often have a water bottle, Johnny's kicking tee, and he'd run through the gates, and then he'd do one with carrying both waters as well. So absolutely genius. Just the big character stuff, Crofty. So you obviously had Paul O'Connell as captain.
Yeah.
You had Brian O'Driscoll, Ronan O'Gara, then you had your Adam Jones, then you had your Andy Powells and characters like that. So who was like the best at sort of bringing that group together, or was it just a collective effort?
Paul O'Connell was, he was the captain. He was the guy that everyone led, and obviously what Paul's done in his career, why wouldn't you lead him? Same with Driscoll. But Andy Powell probably. I mean, Andy Powell, just a monster of a man. I can't remember which game it was that we played, but he absolutely killed someone completely illegally and actually got carded for it, amazingly, which over in South Africa you don't really get cards. But he off the pitch was he was exceptional, but also just mental. I mean, this is the man, obviously, as you know, drove the golf cart down the M4 to go and get a packet of cigarettes and a bag of crisps. So that was just Powley. He was just on one the whole time. Again, you talk about characters. It wasn't always about the legends of the game, the guys who are going to tear up the field. It's the guys who actually make tour life better. I mean, we were in Joburg for 2 or 3 weeks in the Santon sun. Obviously, Joburg's not the safest of places to be. So you're very much in a hotel the whole time. So having those sort of guys just to drive the environment when you go out, when you go for dinner, there's always that sort of voice that you can hear, and that kind of just draws the team together. And that's just what makes tour enjoyable. I mean, as you guys know, the amount of Six Nations camps, the pressure cooker, being cabin fever in Penny Hill, you need a bit of relief from that. And it's those sort of guys like Bobby, like Paulie, those guys who just relieved the stress of a 8-week tour, which is intense. You're backing up games every 3 or 4 days. You're either playing in one, benching another, or basically in rotation. You're leading towards these 3 monumental tests at the end against a team which they only play one way. They play route one, and they're just enormous individuals.
As you mentioned there, Crofty, about South Africa and the team that was coming up against, like, it was stacked. And you talk about the team that they currently have, like, this team also was like a hell of a golden generation. So JP Peterson, Brian Habana, Fourie Dupree, the Beast, John Schmidt, Bakkies Botha, Victor Matfield, Scott Berger, they had Donnie Rousseau,
Smith, Spies.
Yeah.
It was brutal, wasn't it?
It is honestly like brutal.
Morley Stain.
Was that the most physical side you've ever faced?
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, yeah, I mean, up to that point, 100%. As you know, my sort of knowledge of rugby leading into games was fairly limited. It was very much, you face what you face. You're aware of those big name characters, the big pack, the Pierre Spies, the absolute specimen of the man, Victor Matfield, Bakkies Botha, who are just absolute monsters. Shawsy's an absolute monster, but when you got 2 of them, it was petrifying. And I think we were caught massively cold. I'm not sure why, but we went into those. I think we drew with the emerging Bok at Newlands. The team did before that first test. It had been a bit of a long bruising encounter. We played the Southern Kings, who I'm pretty sure they'd just been told to go out and injure as many lads as possible. So we went into that first test feeling ready, feeling good to go. We'd won all the games and drawn against the emerging Boks. We went into that first test and they just went at us and they were scoring off first. I think JP went through off a first phase off the back of a line out. Habana must have scored. It was just like, this is it. And it probably took 25-30 minutes for us to wake up. I think it was a big scuffle kicked off. I'm not sure if that was first or second test, a big scuffle, but basically I tried to run in. Might have been second test. I tried to run in and sort of impose my big 90-kilo body, and got bounced off by Bacchus Bota, and then I thought, right, I've got to go back again. And I got in as close as possible, knowing that if I was in close, he couldn't sort of swing for me. Might drop the Swede on your head, but he wouldn't be able to swing. But it was just, it was a physical encounter, probably the most physical I'd had up until that point, but we were just caught cold. And we started to sort of eke our way back into that game, but probably left it too late. Another 15, 20 minutes, we might have got there in that first test, but we were just caught cold in that first 30.
You said about that Springbok team being one of the best ever. How do you reckon that compares to today's side?
Oh, that's difficult, isn't it?
Is it a different game? Is it a different...
Yeah, it's a different
It's
game.
a different beast now, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah, but
a
you look
different
at
game
like
now. But
the
that is
Beast,
size,
Bismarck,
man.
Du Plessis, John Smith, both and Matfield. Those boys could play in any era.
Yeah, they could.
Brousseau, Smith, Spiess, Rousseau, like Steenkamp.
But have South Africa, I mean, you boys know way better. Has a modern day South African team broadened what they can do? South Africa in 09 was, we've got one player and that's to go straight through you. Even guys like JP were going straight through you. Is the South Africa team now, they've got more strings to that bow, surely.
When you look at that team, they had the individual of like Habana and guys like that, but the forward pack was, we're coming around the corner and we're coming straight over the top of you. And if you can stop it, that's fine. We're not going to change what we do. We're just going to run harder and keep coming and eventually pound the rock and grind you down. Where you look at the modern South Africa, still has huge amount of size in it, but I agree with you, Crofty. They have more strings to their bow and more different ways of playing it.
Got a time machine and lifted some of these players out of this team in 09 and magically dropped them into the present day.
They can still mix it.
Oh, 100%.
100%.
I mean, you look at, say, Habana, De Villiers, like JP Peterson, Francois Stein, like they can play. Matt all dropped, say, today's coaching staff into like 09. You can't tell me these boys couldn't play. I mean, maybe the halfbacks aren't as like brilliant as what they got now, but like it's still.
Well, Frew Dupree was 9, wasn't he?
Yeah,
he's one of the greatest 9s to ever play the game.
Yeah, Ruben Pienaar at 10. So say, you know what I mean, but say they probably haven't got the depth that they've got now. But I've got no doubt if you magically pick one of these and transport them 15 years into the present, they wouldn't look out of place in today's team.
Who'd win out of a game now then? 09 versus modern day.
We'll have to play on Channel M Rugby, won't we?
Comment below who would win out of that 09 team versus that 23 team, and equally who could drop in to the modern day rugby, because I agree with you, Coley. I think pretty much all of them could. I think if anything, like you say, Crofty, the modern day Springboks has more strings to its bow because the game's changed where they didn't have to change, they didn't have to kind of evolve in terms of that way, because it was route one and you had to stop them, and a lot of teams just couldn't. Like Darnie Rousseau is a massive bloke. Actually, I remember, was it Brian O'Driscoll did a hit on him?
Yeah.
And I think they both ended each other, didn't
Driscoll
they?
got back up, but Rousseau basically stood up and then basically tipped himself over.
That's right.
Which was just amazing. But I mean, yeah, South Africa were just brutally physical. I remember, I think it was 2010, I think the year after we played them at Twickenham, and I can't remember who came in the corner, but basically shattered my shoulder. I lost a week on morphine. That was just my thoughts in South Africa was just there. Just
I remember that. It was in the autumn, and they'd lost to Scotland like the week before.
And
we thought they were going to come out and pound us. And
Buddy was playing, wasn't he? We got absolutely spanked.
I think the first kick-off, they actually spread it wide. We were like, not used to this. And as soon as they got to 22, they just went, carry, score. And so someone got latched over the top of you. It was like, oh, God.
That was my first experience playing them as well.
Yeah.
That was that. Yeah. And I remember the time being
shoulder. Cheers.
Yeah, absolute beauty. So when you knew that challenge, that physical challenge was coming, surely it helped having guys like Sean Edwards as your coach, because I've never been coached by him. You, of course, have. You haven't either, Coley. But from the outside, I would say that he loves that confrontation.
Oh, 100%. Defensively, it was very much get off the line and go and smash people. I mean, that was for the other 14 players. Me going up and smashing people, I saw a little wry smile in your face. I didn't really get up and smash people. I tended to.
You give yourself such a disservice, Crofty. You're one of the greats, mate.
I jumped in the line out and then held the width just in case the ball came back. But no, he was. I mean, other than being a bit odd, coming to the gym in his pants and wearing a pair of dress shoes to do some weights in, he just wanted
Can we get a bit more on that?
He wanted just to get lads, I'll come back to it, he just wanted to get lads excited about defence just as much as, like Big Faz was, it was, get excited, make it a whole part of the game where you want to be the first off that line and meet them so they're not getting over the game line, you're meeting them where they're catching the ball. But they were just so fast, so precise, and guys like JP and Abana just cut through the line, and that turned the game. And I say we're on the back foot pretty soon in that first test. But as the games went on, the test went on, we sort of we got up to speed in that. But we were probably, I'd say, half an hour too late into that first test to get a foothold. So. Going fast forwarding, I never watched the DVD. It was 12 years later until I actually watched the DVD. I thought we got spanked in that first test. We actually really didn't. We actually clawed it back quite well, and we almost put ourselves in a position. But I'd say 15, 20 more minutes of that first test. Obviously, it's a big chunk of time, but I think we'd have been in with a shout.
What was training like leading up to that first test? Like, how competitive was that? Like, dealing with the altitude and everything like that? Like, surely, as you build towards that first test, it narrows into exactly why you're on tour, because you'd beaten all the provincial sides pretty comfortably. So what was that build-up like?
To be fair, by the time you get to that, the train towards the back end, once you sort of get an idea of the test team, because you've had so many midweek games in between that, the training was precise, it was intense when it needed to be, but it had wigs, so we obviously did the live scrummaging, we did some mauling and brawling, but it wasn't for a long period of time. It was more just a little bit of finesse, bring in some little moves if we needed to, but at that point, after the last sort of midweek game, that test team was kind of known. It was announced in good time, so that team could then prepare, and the guys who weren't picked made sure that every player that was playing was as prepared as well as possible. So it was a proper collective effort. Training was physical, it was intense, it wasn't overly long, it just got you excited. That's what at the back end of that, you've got to think we already played 38 games in that season. I think I played, and sort of the test became sort of the back end of that. You don't need to be knocking 7 bells out. It was more just to make sure that you were comfortable as a team, as a 15 or a 23 going into that first test. It wasn't about trying to injure people. It was just making sure that you were in the best possible headspace. So having guys like Bobby, brilliant, because he got you into a good headspace. In terms of knowledge of the line out, Paulie was meticulous with doing walkthroughs, in which we did every evening. In a car park, on the beach, in the gym, wherever, we'd always do it, just made sure that the line out was just bang on every time, much as we did it at club. And so you went into that first test in full knowledge that you knew everything, you were comfortable, you felt good, hydrated, you were eating the good food. It was just about feeling good in that first test.
Crofty, let's talk about the test matches, because I actually watched the first test back, and it's one of the most brutal games going. Like, as in, South Africa are tough, but you actually look at some off the ball stuff, like there'll be a ball going out of breakdown and someone will fly in, you know what I mean, like 4th, 5th bloke into breakdown just to like cheap shot somebody, and vice versa. It is like, there's rugby being played, but it's probably one of those, like, as close to old school, like the old sort of tours you hear about where people are just fighting, going. So, and watching that, as you said, Lions came out and obviously got punched in the face by South Africa, but there are opportunities to like almost win the game. But I think Monya gets held up over the line or doesn't score in the corner. I think Mike Phillips drops it over the line, something like that. I mean, there's a couple of, like, probably nowadays there'd be penalty tries in some regards, but just the way the game was refereed back then is they're not. But what was the sort of feeling like during the test, and then probably also after that first test, in regards to whether it was a missed opportunity or whether it was sort of like...
I mean, that feeling during the first test, the first opportunity you get to really sort of assess where we're at was at half time, which was just boys absolutely out for the count. It was fast, it was physical, and I think we know that for the first 20 minutes we'd sort of just let the game slip a little bit. I think we scored 1 or 2 tries before half time, and sort of kind of got back in there and increased momentum after that. But it was very much right. We know what we're up against now. I think we probably went in, not naively, no, because you've got so much class and so much knowledge within that squad that we weren't naive going into that game. Maybe I was, but I think we just got caught a little bit cold. A few balls went to ground. Defensively, we were probably a few boys slow getting around the corner. That was what it was very much. It was like from the scrum, from the line out, you get around the corner, you front up, you go forward, and we probably left a few dog legs, and they've got absolute world-class players that took advantage of that. So that first test came and went. It was bloody frustrating. The feeling after we went through the analysis was actually we were in this game massively. As I keep saying, that first 15, 20 minutes, if that hadn't have happened, the outcome could have been different. It might not have been, but it could have been. And it was just like, where can we improve? Defence was probably the biggest thing on that. We were a bit loose getting around the corner in terms of our shape. So obviously Sean had a word with that. And then in attacking structure as well, we probably didn't actually attack as well as we had in the provincial games. I think we thought, well, guys, we're playing a test now. We can't quite do what we've done in those games against like the Golden Lions, Southern Kings, all those sort of guys. Whereas actually those are the sort of things that made our point of difference, because we had the incredible players, Mike Phillips, as you mentioned, those sort of guys could snipe from anywhere. O'Driscoll, Roberts, the axis those two guys formed as a centre partnership was one of the best you've seen. Tommy Bowe on the wing as well. Like it was exceptional in terms of the firepower we had in the backs. Up front, tactically and in terms of playing out the lineouts and stuff like that, we were good. Obviously, scrum was an issue, especially that first half, as you can probably detail more with obviously Vix versus the Beast, which was a brutal thing to see. When as you know, if you can't get a solid base in half of your set piece, it does make sort of attacking pretty tough. So that was tough. That was tough as a team. That was tough on Vix. But obviously, he rectified that in the third test. But there was a few things that weren't quite on point, and that just led to that result. But we learnt a lot, and I think going into the second, we vastly improved that.
The test actually finished in Durban, South Africa 26, Lions 21. Did the intensity and the magnitude and physicality of that first test surpass anything that you were preparing for?
For me, yeah. I mean, obviously the older boys had probably played those physical games before. For myself, I remember coming off the back of that, and that evening I went to my room, my knee had locked, it sort of not quite straight, and I was thinking, oh Christ, I was toying with, do you get one of the lads just to sort of jump on it to try and unlock it, or go and see the physios and that sort of thing. So obviously I went for the latter and got the physios to sort it out rather than, Paulie stamping on my knee. So yeah, recovery after that was key. Again, it wasn't about flogging the boys in training. It was about recovery, getting boys feeling right and feeling good. We now knew what we were in. We knew South Africa were going to be bloody hard, but obviously we knew there was opportunities missed in that first test, and we knew that we, amazingly, and the best thing about international rugby in a bit of a tour is you have the next week to try and pull it right, which we did in the second test. So it was tough, it was frustrating. It's always hard to go down 1-0 in a series to start off with, but we knew where we could fix and how we could improve. It wasn't like it was they are that good that we cannot beat them. We just know we made a few mistakes and we had to rectify.
In that first test, you getting selected, having originally not been on the tour, late call up, then playing so well in provincial teams. Like, what was that journey like from going from that to actually being named in that first test?
Pretty surreal, bit of disbelief, bit of I'm obviously, I'm being selected because maybe someone's not fit or someone's injured. That was kind of my first. I mean, it was Wig that told me, Graham Roundtree, who told me that I was going to be playing in that first test, and jumped straight away thinking, crap, take myself back to the bedroom and just sort of stare blankly into a wall for a bit, just to let things process. A massive honour. I mean, to be picked to start in the first test over in South Africa when I wasn't going to be involved at all. There's always that little bit of imposter syndrome, thinking, Christ, am I good enough? You start to have those doubts. But the team that were around me and the way training had gone, and guys like Paulie, who probably recognised a fairly 23 years older youngster within the team, sort of arm round them, wing round them to make sure that they're right going into that. They're happy, they're confident, and you do enough reps that you start to get a bit more comfortable in that role. So when it came to set piece and scrums, you're happy. It's what you then try and do around the park and making sure that you're reading the lines, when you've got guys like, as I said before, O'Driscoll, Roberts, Tommy Bowe, who cut such amazing lines and are so quick to the ball, you can always run those cheat lines because you know they're going to break that first tackle. And it was just trying to reinforce that in training so that by the time you got onto the test field, you were comfortable, but never expected to be involved with the Lions, as much as I sort of kind of got caught up with the media hype, to then get selected, the call up from Geech on the Wednesday before we flew, to then playing in the provincial games and scored a few tries and starting to enjoy it. And then obviously Wig telling me I was in the first test was a bit of disbelief. And then after that first test, you got some positive feedback of stuff you'd done well, and you're thinking, it just builds your confidence. I mean, you always think, right, well, the coaches could change their mind. We lost the first test. They need to go for maybe a more physical pack. Obviously, Joe Worsley was out there as well. A guy who's loads of cabs, Wasps legend, played for England. They could quite easily have parachuted him in for a more physical game, which they knew the second test was going to be. And I, to myself, probably always thought they would have done. And so when we gave me the nod for the second test, I was like, brilliant, but the pressure's on. You've got to now deliver, and that was again another step up in pressure.
Didn't Wig tell you were picked once? But he was like winking at you, like, and you're like, what? And he's like that, and you're like looking at him like, what? Like that. And he's like, is that right?
Yeah.
Is that right?
No, I don't think we did.
No,
I think
can't remember.
Wig didn't have a very good poker face. Like, if Wig knew you were playing, especially as the Leicester lads, he'd always give you a bit, or he'd just walk into it in the
winking at me
hallway.
and be like,
Yeah.
like before team announcement, you're like,
Yeah, big thumbs up.
You got something in his
I'm
eye?
playing like that. He's like,
The second test, Pretoria, the Lions led. The end of the result was South Africa won 28-25, but the Lions led pretty much up until the 76th minute or something like that in the game. And that must have been devastating, because the test series, you lose the test series, but you lose the match as well. And in that circumstance as well, because you say you come off the back of the first defeat, you've played yourself, and you're in a position to win the game. But what was the feeling after, in regards to just?
I mean, yeah, the game was brilliant. That was probably the most physical game I've ever played in my life. I mean, it was brutal. Schmidt was done for gouging. There's like broken bones.
Adam Jones dislocated his shoulder in like 45 minutes in the second half. Yeah,
trying to pop it in. Dricko was smashing people. Then that was the scrap with Bacchus and Victor Matfield in the full melee. Lions were on top. We were scoring tries. We were actually in charge of the game. And I think, South Africa scored a few tries at the back in the second half, which brought them back into sort of level. It was all square, 25 all. We were bollocks. It was a tough, hot game, and the Lions crowd there was amazing. You ran out the tunnel and it was just a sea of red. There's an iconic picture of obviously the Lions in South Africa, and actually the back stand behind it was just red. It was unbelievable, and the atmosphere was incredible. And I remember that obviously a few minutes left, the ball's kicked behind us. Roger's back there, runs it up a few steps and then sends it up. And obviously at the time you sort of just you watch as he runs past you to put you back on side. And obviously he's taking him out in midair and a penalty given, but you're still thinking, wow, it's at 55, 58 metres. We're still in a good place, but then you're like, when he points to the post, you're like, fuck. So obviously, you then line up thinking, still a monster kick. And obviously he slots it, and it's, as you say, you've lost the game, which you should have won, or should have actually been out of sight of it at that point, but it's more the fact you've just lost the series. And I remember going back into the change room, and you're knackered, you got nothing left basically in you, but everyone was it was just a deadly quiet change room. We've had it at the club and with England, where you've lost games you should have won, but there was so much on this. I think because of 97 and the success Lions had in South Africa then, we kind of had that little bit in the back of your head thinking, wow, we could recreate something like this. And to lose the game, which we should have won in the second test, where even we could have drawn it, that would have been fine, and it's all onto the third, but we lost it as a team because we should have been out of sight by then. The fact that Rod sent the kick up and gave the pen away is neither here nor there, because we should have been out of sight. But it was just sort of devastation that we'd lost the series. All that effort, winning the provincial games meant nothing. We were 2-0 down, going into a bit of a consolation game, which was pretty brutal, and it took a good sort of 3-4 days to get over that.
Jack Faree scored a hell of a try for South Africa, didn't he?
Yeah.
The centre, and he scored in that right hand corner. Yeah. So I think he handed off someone, ran over the top of someone. It was like, got them back into it, and then that kick from Mornay Steyn to obviously win it. You say afterwards, Crofty, it's like that feeling of one defeat 2 of giving it absolutely everything because of the physical encounter. And that just silence in the sheds. Did anyone, at what stage did someone speak, or what stage did someone try and grab hold of it?
Paulie spoke as captain, Geech spoke, but it was very much, you've got to say something. There's no fix there, is there? There's nothing you can say that magically sort of switches the brain thinking, okay, cool, but we've got another opportunity next week, because we get to play them one more time, but nothing rides on it. I mean, it's probably wrong. At the time, nothing rode on it at all, because the series was lost. The Lions brand going into the third test was the thing that was riding on it. And having watched the DVD 12 years later after it, you then saw the jubilation, the sort of how the Lions brand was not resurrected, because that's the wrong. It wasn't all on that game, and 09 didn't save the Lions, because Lions is such a long existing brand. But that third test gave Lions as a brand a boost, us as a team a boost. But at that sort of first couple of days was just brutally somber around camp. Training was tough. A few beers were allowed just to try and get boys back together. One last effort, but it was shit, really shit.
Have your opinions changed over that period of time? Because I look at that team, right, and we spoke about South Africa being the world champions in that second test, and the legends they've got in that thing. The Lions is one of the biggest challenges in sport, not only just playing away, but for everyone to come together and play, no matter how good your players are, but to come together in that short period of time to put something forward as a team to play. That's tough, no matter what sport you're playing, but especially in rugby. They've got some legendary names in there, but if you name that second test, it's bigger than the sum of its part. The performance I think the Lions put into that show is bigger than the performance. You got Rob Kearney, Tommy Bowe, Brian Driscoll, Jamie Roberts, Luke Fitzgerald started, Stephen Jones, Mike Phillips, Gethin Jenkins, Matthew Rees, Adam Jones, Shaw, O'Connell, Croft, Wallace, Heaslip. They're big names in probably the Northern Hemisphere, but in terms of the world game with the Springboks there, that Lions team outperformed the people on the pitch, you know what I mean? And to be able to win that game, to be with 76 minutes winning that game against the world champions in the back garden in an all or nothing game, for me, I'd say that's almost up there with one of the best Lions performances, best performances ever in the history, especially in our sort of rugby careers.
We knew what we'd built in those provincial games. We knew where we'd got to for probably 60 minutes of the first test, and we actually knew that you're right. Actually, what the team could do was far better than sort of the individual parts. So that's why we were gutted, because we knew the team we had, we could beat the world champions from 2 years ago. We knew we could have done that, and that was the gutting thing, that we'd put ourselves in potentially two positions where we could have been 2-0 up, and know that we just pulled off an amazing victory, amazing series win in the first 2 tests, and we fell short just so amazing. But there's no accolades for falling just short, is there? That was the problem. We'd lost the first test by not being there at the races for the first 15-20 minutes, and we let the second test slip, and the result at the end was down to the team, not down to one. In terms of my view now, immensely proud, having watched the DVD 12 years later. It generally was going into when the boys went to South Africa last time. That was the first time I watched it, and actually had a bit of pride and sense of actually we were close, we were good, but still opportunity missed. I suppose it's for you lads, with World Cup, with the final. It's what a hell of an achievement to go that far and to get a silver and a bronze in World Cups. But I presume in the back of your head you're still thinking it'd be nice to have done that. A bit like European Cups for us, losing to Leinster in Edinburgh. It would have been nice to have got a European Cup. It'd been fucking amazing to have won over in South Africa in the Lions tour. And that's always the little thing missed.
I think it's not lost, but it is lost in the fact that it's, I say, once every 12 years, it's people coming together. Again, that opportunity is, you say it's never going to come again, but it's literally in rugby. It's less likely than World Cup finals, you know what I mean? Because teams can stay together, you get the same team, but they're every 4 years. So that's every 12 years. It's first, second test. It's such a almost unique 1 in a trillion type opportunity. So I guess afterwards, I say it is that.
I mean, I'm 7 years retired now. I'm way more proud of my Lions stuff now than I ever was. Sort of digging out the absolute crinkled shirt behind us, which I apologise, the iron wouldn't quite go through. I almost burnt the HSBC off the front with the iron this morning. going through that and actually seeing the shirts and pulling them out of the bag and thinking, Christ, that's pretty cool. And the amount of shirts there are with all the different names and the first test, second test, and all that, your pride increases with retirement, which, as you know, you'll probably realise once over the years as they go through. Once you finally step back, you'll realise what you've achieved and how immensely proud. And your pride does grow. And then when you try and tell your kids that, even though they're not remotely interested in what you've done, even when you try to show them all these YouTube clips of dad scoring tries, they're not fussed by that. But yeah, your sort of your pride and what you've achieved does, I think, increase with age of retirement. But at the moment, for you, it might not seem like that.
Thank you, mate. But the 09, had the 09 team won, I almost feel that would have been as iconic as the 97 team winning. You know, South Africa obviously won the 95 World Cup. 2 years later, Lions weren't necessarily expected to win. Like, a remarkable tour. And it's almost very similar in 09 and what that could have achieved. Geech did a hell of a speech.
I think almost the time for words are finished. But I do want to say that I'm immensely proud of what you've done and what everybody's done in the squad to this point. You've actually put credibility and pride in a jersey, not just for everybody associated with it here, but you listen to people who've come into the hotel, you listen to supporters. Now that takes some doing. They've said there's nothing to play for, it's a dead series. Mind you what Gat said on Wednesday, I think we've everything to play for. Because today will determine what we are. It will say everything about us. And I've had all sorts of things in my head about character, what they'll challenge, how deep you're going to have to dig, what you'll have to bring out. In the first week, we said that. When you put this jersey on, it asks of you things that no other jersey can ever ask of you. We can leave a legacy. And this last game, in this jersey, for the players to pick up in 4 years' time. And for 4 years, we can leave something that makes sure when people think about the Lions, they think good. They'll think about you, they'll think about this performance, and they can live with it for 4 years. And some of you might be there to pick up the next jersey in 4 years' time. Some of us won't be. Please, please, give them something to play for, something to understand. Good luck. But play for everything that we want that jersey to be and everything you've made it so far. All the best, boys.
Amazing speech, but were you aware of him breaking down afterwards?
I remember, because obviously I was on the bench for the third test, and so we were there in the team meeting. All the lads, you sort of, as a bench, you sort of sat back a little bit, let the lads who were starting get the bags, get on the bus, and not get in their way, because you might be on the first minute, but you might be on the 79th minute. So you always sort of hang back to let them get on the bus. And I was aware of Geech sort of being a bit, breaking down, teary after that, and sort of walking out. And then obviously you see on the video, Wig going over to him and consoling him. So, but that's, you might get some people that say, well, it's just all for the cameras. It wasn't. Everyone was that emotionally charged. Geech especially, that's what made him so good, because it wasn't about presenting to a camera or social media as you get these days. It was just raw emotion for him. It was whatever he thought, he said. And that's why he gained the respect, and that's why people sort of bought into what he stood for and where he wanted this Lions team to go. So he was sort of the glue that just kept people together. And going into that third test, it was a brutal first part of the week when you're getting over the loss of the series. You got to Wednesday and you thought, fuck it, let's go for it. We can still do something amazing here. You could go win a third test and we can have an amazing night out afterwards, or an amazing 3 days afterwards.
because that clip of him is iconic. You know, with Geech, the clip of, obviously you think of your Jim Telfers and everyone like that, but that is an iconic moment from a Lions great in many ways. Obviously played for them, coached them, did the 97. Like, you know, you almost associate certain people with Lions, and he's definitely one of them. And it kind of showed like what it means to him, and the way he describes it and the way he talks about the shirt and everything like that, like epitomises what representing the Lions is.
100%. As I said, his emotion was infectious. The whole thing about you're a custodian of the shirt, it's never a truer sort of phrase. You know, you're lucky enough to be fit, on form at that period of time every 4 years. You then get to look after that shirt for one game. There's no guarantee of another game. You could play one game, you could play every game in the tour. But being that custodian of the shirt and making sure that you leave it in a better place after you come off that pitch and you've emptied yourself, and that you can look at the other person in the eye and say, I've done everything I can today. That was sort of the ongoing message. Now, whether we achieved that, I don't know, but I felt after that third test, you know, we put things in a better place than they had been.
That third test, Coley, that ended up, how did that finish up?
Third test, the Lions won 28-9. But the teams were quite heavily rotated, weren't they? Was that basically like the physical exertion for the first couple of games, the emotion? There was a lot of boys that probably wanted to play, but the coaches saw upon it that the rotation happened and some fresh legs came into the team to sort of change it up. Or
I think that was it, or the boys in the second test were just crap. I don't know. Wig said to me, I don't know, I ever said this before, he just said, look, you know, 2 massive tests off the back of a tour, I'm going to stick you on the bench, you know, get some fresh legs on there. And the boys, obviously, you know, the guys that took the field are incredible. You know, at 6, obviously, Worsley coming on. I think he came off at like 20 minutes for a blood or something, which I had to do a quick trot around, then came back off. Simon Shaw on there. You know, guys, you know, Ricky Flutie was on. Shane Williams, I think it was a little tap back. And it just worked. Everything just clicked. Now, is it a nothing game? I suppose South Africa could sort of ease off the gas a little bit, and you could say that they weren't quite on the ball the whole time, but I think just the way the Lions played, obviously he was going the length of the pitch, which he replays weekly on his Twitter, but just the way the team played, regardless of whether South Africa rocked up or not, is what made the end of that game so good for us, and actually brought the team together. And you see the jubilation after the game on the pitch with all the coaches, all the players, all the lads in suits who weren't playing. It just was a bit of like you can suddenly breathe and just go, right, we can now enjoy each other's company. Wasn't the result we want in terms of a series, but you know, fantastic last win, a few battles won, and then let's just get on the piss.
And how were those celebrations, mate?
The celebrations were good. I remember Dusty Hare being out there, and he was probably the drunkest man. I mean, Christ, how was Dusty?
60, let's say 70. Dusto was 70.
I remember he had a bit of like a Tigers tour pack over there, and so he was leading the charge there. We were in Joburg. I remember being with Hazza in sort of like the foyer of this hotel. It had a big glass elevator overlooking sort of the auditorium. And for some reason, we were playing a card game or a drinking game, or we just wanted to get naked. And we went up and down the elevator, butt naked, doing the YMCA. Because you do. I think it was about 10 years later, someone came up to me and said, you remember South Africa? And then I was like, yeah. He said, remember the last the party after the last test? I said, just about. And then he pulled out his picture, basically like me doing the starfish in the elevator, which I was like, Christ, just can I have that? And the negatives. But that kind of, that sort of ended the tour on a high. 2-3 days, just having a good drink together, just enjoying each other's company, which, as you know, that's what rugby is about. What happens on the pitch is immense. But as I actually quite like when you harping back to your retirement, which you know everyone's being really nice about you, it's those friendship and bonds you make, which are the ones where you can then go to any town, country, city, and you'll know someone to go for a coffee. So it's those bonds which were reinforced at that point. And I saw Tommy Bowe last summer in Portugal, and it's like nothing's ever changed. So I say those bonds were important, and that's what's cemented in those final days.
You've pretty much answered it there, but that's one thing I was going to ask you. Do you buy into the ethos of you know, when Geech says about there'll be a look and a nod and you just know because you're a part of something.
100%. We went to a Lions lunch down in London just after COVID. It was one of the first sporting dinners after COVID had finished or had broken, and we were allowed out. And there was about 30 Lions turned up from the last 20 years, whatever it was. And even you haven't seen lads for 15 years, it was straight away back on. Mearsy is the oracle of Lee Mears, or the oracle of any story. My memory is shocking, but he was coming up with all these stories that I completely forgotten, and I had forgotten for a reason. But just those sort of things. It's a look and you have a beer, and it's like you pick up from where you left off.
Before we move into the darts, and I know you're good at darts, Crofty, because you told me the other day, he was like, I won't see you in the morning, mate, I'll be gone. I said, oh, why? He goes, I've got to get to work, and then when I get to work I like to play at least half an hour of darts. I was like, what? So there's big pressure on it.
Does that make the edit? Because the boss is my watch list.
Yeah. But I tell you one thing, I got to say, Crofty, whilst you're on, genuinely, mate, like, you'll go down in 09 Lions as a hell of a tourist, hell of a performance, mate. And I know your career ended earlier than you expected, but you really have been Leicester legend, England legend, and a Lions legend. So well done, mate, because we haven't had you on and we give you some stick, mate, but check him out on YouTube because he scored some of the best tries you will see. That one against Quins in particular, one against France for England, mate, one of the greats, Crofty. So thanks for joining, mate. And let's see what your darts are like.
Right, it's time to play THB, Treble R Bullseyes. Every month, we, along with our partners, Watches of Bath, are going to donate money to grassroots rugby. If you want to enter, the link is in the episode description. You can only enter once, and if you don't win today, you will automatically be entered into next month's darting contest. So don't worry. Tom Croft is in the warm-up area today with Ben. So I'm going to throw it over to you, Ben.
Crofty, all warmed up, mate? You all good?
Hi, mate. As you know, we've got dartboard at work, so I've been preparing for this for months.
Fully confident. What's your darts name?
I haven't got one. Not appropriate for this anyway.
Right, let's AI it. Blindside Bullseye. Blindside Bullseye is your name.
Definitely won't be getting any bullseyes.
I have my randomiser, and teams you should be looking out for today are Old Bedians Rugby Football Club, who want money to invest in player recruitment. Old Newtonians Academy, who want money for the junior training kit. Ashford Rugby Club want money for the under-8s trophies for their performances this season. And Stamford Rugby Club want money for the floodlights. Right, let's see who this month's winners are. And the winners are Shrewsbury Rugby Club. And they want the money to spend on their women's changing rooms.
For Shrewsbury, Crofty, Blindside Bullseye, for every point you score is worth £10. You've got 3 darts, and then you have the bonus bill dart. You've got to hit the bullseye. You can do green or red, and it will double whatever you've made.
And why is it called the bonus bill, Ben?
Because it doesn't matter what's happened in the past, everyone deserves a bonus. Good luck.
£200. £400. £600.
600 quid, mate. Let's double it. Come on, bonus bill. Oh,
so close. Literally
close.
Rimmed it.
How you feeling, mate? Well done.
£600. That should go towards the women's change room, shouldn't it?
Thank you for watching the Bath for the donation. If you want to get your club entered into the darting contest, use the link in the episode description now.
Thank you so much for listening. Crofty, thanks for joining. Awesome episode. We'll see you again very soon.
For the love of rugby.
If you want to drop us a line, get involved with our socials.
Just search for @LoveOfRugby. And if you've listened to all our episodes and need another podcast, go and find Joe Marler's Things People Do.
See you next time.